To give us some insights on this, we're now joined via Skype by the head of department at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, Professor Adrian Puren. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. So take us through this protocol. I mean, is it unusual? Is it something that we need to worry about?
Not at this particular stage, Peter. As you know, trials that are developed go through different phases from phase 1 to phase 3. And for each part of that vaccine trial, safety is one of the key features of the vaccine trial. So this is a good thing that it's publicly announced that there has been what was called an adverse event. And obviously adverse events are graded from mild to severe. And obviously this level of event was obviously quite severe, that the trial has actually been suspended. So what will happen now, as you know, in the trial, people are randomized to either the placebo group as well as to the product. And so what will happen now is that you will have what is called a data safety monitoring committee. And what will happen is that particular participant will be unblinded so that the committee knows whether this individual was in either the placebo arm or in the product arm. And then they will actually investigate very thoroughly to determine, in the case of the placebo arm, was that just a coincident event, unrelated at all, because that is the placebo arm. But in the case of a participant who is in the product arm with a severe adverse event, that becomes obviously more difficult, technically more difficult to know whether or not this is a coincident event or it's an unrelated event or actually is related to the actual vaccine product. And then they will come to a conclusion, then make a finding, and then from there, events will take its course.
All right, it sounds as if that there needs to be some Chinese walls involved here, that groups of people that have certain knowledge are kept away from those that are active in the field and doing the work of the testing, so that they will never know, the ones on the field, just exactly which basket this person was, to keep the integrity of the data. Am I reading that correctly?
Absolutely. So you'll hear terms like double-blinded, randomized controlled trials. And that means both the principal investigator and all the individuals, even when they inject that individual with whatever that product is, it could be the placebo or the vaccine product, they want to know what that individual has received. So they're completely blinded to that process, or to what has actually happened to that individual. It's only the independent, and that's really critical, it's independent of the trial principal investigator and all the other investigators, that independent group of individuals and experts will look at that data of that particular individual, given the seriousness of the event, and come to a particular finding. And the same goes for at the end of the trial as well. That data safety monitoring board will also look at the data of the effectiveness of that particular vaccine, and they will again come to particular conclusions whether or not the trial is futile, or whether or not this trial should be stopped because in fact it is showing efficacy, for example. So that's the role of that data and safety monitoring board.
And I would imagine what's probably going to happen is that they're going to monitor those that have had the vaccine or the placebo, just to see if similar symptoms develop in other people as well.
Absolutely. So, each time an individual goes to receive his or her, let's say the injection in this particular case, they are monitored, in other words, and they will monitor any event that happens. It's called reactogenicity, for example, whether it be a pain as a result of the injection, for example, fatigue, fever, all of these symptoms are accumulated. And as you know, these trials, especially in the phase 3 part, which is this particular trial, really it recruits large numbers of individuals. So these events can then be shown up. Because if you only have a small trial, you will not see these particular rare events. So it's really important, and that's why 30,000 to 50,000 individuals are recruited to these particular trials to really ensure not only about the efficacy of the vaccine, but also about the safety of this particular vaccine, because you can have events like this, or you could have events where, for example, the vaccine causes worse outcomes than in the placebo arm.
All right, so the WHO was saying that this particular journey seems to be the closest to getting to the finish line with yielding perhaps some good results. Do we still have an idea of timeline based on where we got to before the pause? And what might this pause mean to that now?
Well, I think the pause, it just depends, I think, on what the outcome is of the investigation. Could be the next 2 weeks or less, depending, as I said, depending on which arm this particular individual fell into, and depending on what the actual adverse event was. So that could be 2 to 3 weeks, for example, that then the pause is lifted, and then they could continue, provided that they feel that they will probably not see any further events, or this is a rare occurrence, for example, or that further monitoring is required. So I would think that still, I know that very often January is put as one particular cut-off figure, but again, I think we really need to be patient and cautious, and look at, say, the second or third quarter of next year to really see results. I know that there's a lot of pressure, obviously, because that is what we're looking for in terms of herd immunity. But I think we still need to, it's really critical that safety is a key feature of a vaccine trial, and that we take it through the whole phase 3 part of this particular trial. And there are other vaccines as well. I think that we need to just be aware that although there are only 3 trials currently at what we call the phase 3 level, there's a whole pipeline, if you like, of about 200 odd preclinical, right up to about 43 trials in this phase 1 to phase 3 period. So I think we are looking not just for one vaccine, I think we're looking for multiple vaccines, given the large numbers of people that will probably require this particular vaccine. And we don't really know how often they would have to be vaccinated in order to really protect those individuals.
Suppose if this AstraZeneca trial can be paused because of one person, it then starts to raise big questions about Russia saying they've got a vaccine and they're actually already handing it out, and maybe even the United States saying that before the November elections they'll have a vaccine out. It seems that perhaps these other two are either moving at breakneck speed or perhaps breaking rules.
Well, I think the vaccine, the major groups in the vaccine trial have really come out, I think, a few days ago in a public statement saying they will go through the full licensure procedure. In other words, they will complete the phase 3, have that analyzed, and then go, if it was successful, go through licensure. I think that's an important and transparent comment to have been made. Rather than going through what I think has happened in Russia and in part in China and probably India as well, is what we call an emergency use, where in fact, as you quite rightly say, you don't really know because it hasn't gone through the reference or gold standard, so you don't really know what the efficacy of this particular vaccine would be. So I think there's be great caution. And as you know, in the United States, for example, there's a great deal of skepticism already about the COVID vaccines. So again, it's really critical that the companies are transparent, that they conduct the trials to the highest possible standard in order to gain the confidence of the public in terms of actually, were these vaccines to be licensed, that in fact they will actually be taken up.
All right, so bottom line, this pause is not a need to be alarmed or concerned straight away, and it should encourage us that they're taking this study so seriously and that we're going over the right hurdles to get to the right result.
Absolutely, it's really critical. And as I said, it's quite interesting. Just a few days ago, in fact, most of the major companies involved in the vaccine trials have actually publicly said they want to go through this rigorous process of licensure in order for the public to be confident in what they have actually achieved. And as I said, there are multiple vaccines coming through, so I think there may be the inevitable failures, but I think ultimately there will be those vaccines that will be successful, but that the public needs to be confident that they will have access to a good product.
Professor Puren, thanks very much indeed. It was a pleasure talking to you, and we appreciate your valuable insights. Thank you and good night.